Welcome. We're so glad you could join us today. Today we have two special guests. I'm Ann Rhoades with People Ink, and we have Gayle Watson, who is the COO of People Ink and a known leadership development guru. We also have Brian Mohr, who is the co-founder of Anthym most recently, but is a serial entrepreneur. And you're going to hear more from Brian today and about his past and some of the things he's working on, some new resources. And we're going to talk today about a topic that recently was brought to mind when we read an article by the CEO of Salesforce who said the 9-to-5 workforce no longer exists. It's a new world and we need to adapt to the change. However, values are still important. Workforce will be more personalized. Our work time, our workplace will be really worker-driven versus employer-driven. Third, we're going to talk about leadership and the new performance model, how it requires listening and really adapting to a new style and really, frankly, new skills. And fourth, we're going to talk about some of the resources that are available today to help you make it in this new environment. I'd like to start with Brian. And Brian, you were recently talking a lot. We were talking about a lot of the importance of values in this new workforce model and also workforce personalization, a new term. Can you elaborate a little bit on these two topics?
Absolutely. It's really great to be with both of you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty crazy world we're living in today. And, you and Gayle and the People Ink team, you guys have dedicated your lives to the pursuit of ensuring that organizations are incredibly clear with what their values are and the behaviors that support them. And, as a result of, this workplace evolution and so many people being virtual, values, I think, have taken on a whole new level of importance because, what was once a manager's ability to be with their team and have that line of sight, that physical presence with them to ensure that, things were being done the way that the organization wants them done, that's been removed. It's evaporated for so many organizations. And if you were very clear as an organization and having not only a great set of values, but as important, if not more, the behaviors that support them, I think the teams were able to really figure out, how do I do what I'm supposed to do if I'm not in the place that I was used to doing it? So I think the values have taken on a whole new level of importance. And as I mentioned, the behaviors that support them. We talked about the workforce personalization piece. I think what's so interesting, and again, this is something that I know I've picked up from you and Gayle over the years, is this notion of fair but not equal. I think leaders today have really recognized, as a result of connecting with their teammates through Zoom and having this unintentional invitation into their homes, that they're getting a peek into the real lives of the people who support their organizations. And everybody operates on a different schedule. We've talked about, when can you have meetings if, parents or single parents are trying to get their kids ready for virtual school in the morning, and can you do some of the same things that you once did before? And I think just what's going to end up happening is the organizations that understand that they need to treat everybody fairly, but that does not mean that everybody is homogenized into some sort of a 9-to-5 or an equal sort of landscape of how, when, and where the work's going to get done, which I think leads to a third super interesting reality. Is this is a job seekers market. Those A players out there, they're eventually going to find their ways to the organizations that are allowing for that intense amount of personalization that I think the A players are going to demand for them to do their best work. And I think as a result of that, it's going to open up a whole new set of, what does leadership look like as we continue to sort of settle into, whether it's fully remote, hybrid, back to the office, whatever it is, it's going to demand a new set of leadership skills. And I'd be super curious if I can maybe turn to Gayle and ask, based on what you see, the conversations you've been having, what does that look like from your perspective of how leadership's going to continue to evolve, given just what we've been through and where we're headed?
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for asking that question. Really, the fundamentals of leadership don't change a whole lot, but it really requires more focus. First of all, I can tell you what doesn't work from talking with our leaders who are successful with this big transition they're having to make to managing a virtual workforce, and that's command and control. So command and control is out. I mean, you're not there on a regular basis to see what people are doing. And so you have to really kind of shift your focus to what are people really accomplishing and what do they need on a daily basis to get that done? And how will you know that that's being done? And so these are the things that leaders have to step back and really kind of take stock of. And I would like to step back a minute. You were talking earlier about values, Brian, and the point here is that if you're leading with values, you really need to be selecting leaders who are really living the way that your organizational values are stating the expectations for. And you've got to trust your leaders and the people in your organization to deliver. I mean, you working remotely demands a high trust culture. And and of course, there are some things that go along with that involve trusting people. I mean, you've got to expect people to do the right thing. You've got to expect the best from everyone, respect everyone, and believe that they are doing their best, and require accountability. I mean, it doesn't mean that everybody it can not do and perform. It means that they're accountable for particular outcomes. And then, of course, teamwork becomes a much more, and collaboration has to really be intentionally planned in these kind of environments. So finally, I would just say, focusing on performance, it really goes back to what I said in the beginning, and that is focus on the outcomes. So you've got to give clear direction. You've got to have a discipline around planning and the activities and the outcomes, and have clear expectations on the performance outcomes that you want, and to be clear about execution. This kind of environment requires more possibly regular touch points that are designed to see how people are progressing. If they need help, they're going to, you need to probably specifically do a little more coaching and give people feedback more frequently. So you can see these are not new things, but these are things that leaders must focus on really to be successful in this new environment. So, the good news is, Brian, that there are a number of tools and resources now that are available to leaders. So in your new venture with Anthym is one of those resources. And would you kind of just tell everyone what are some of the challenges that typical remote teams have, and then how does Anthym solve this problem?
So you spoke about high trust cultures and how important that is. And I think one of the interesting things that many organizations and teams are now sort of coming to grips with is some of the different practices that fed into how trust was built. And we really look at it from really two different lenses. One is formal practices, and the second is informal practices. Formal practices, by and large, you can think of them like your Monday morning meetings, your regular manager-employee one-on-ones, your quarterly business reviews, executive team meetings, things like that. Replicating those in the virtual world, most organizations were able to do fairly seamlessly, and they were able to continue business as usual, and just where you're doing the meetings has changed. Instead of in person, you're doing them virtually. On the informal side, though, interestingly, those are all of the informal, organic, unscripted, serendipitous, like all of those collisions, morning coffee in the break room, or the chit chats that would happen in a conference room before and after meetings, randomly popping over to somebody's desk because you have something in common. Maybe it was a sports game that happened the previous weekend. All of those informal rituals have been really hard to replace in the virtual remote world. And if you think about and take a step back, how important those informal rituals are, I would argue, and I think many would agree, that those were the foundation for where real trust and relationships were being built. As we think about trust, you've got competency-based trust, people who can do their job and do it well. They've got the gifts, the talents, the expertise. But then you've got that sense of vulnerability or benevolence-based trust. And replacing that void, I think, is really, really important. And that's where Anthym comes in, as creating. Now, granted, we can't do it organic or unscripted because you need to make sure people are showing up online if you want to have an experience to replace these informal rituals. But that's where Anthym comes in. It taps into the power of personal storytelling and creates an environment where members of a team can connect with one another, carve out intentional time to really kind of set aside some of the work-related stuff for a little while and replace some of those informal rituals that are just so critical to high trust cultures and high performing teams. So we're excited about it. We're very early in the process, learning a lot, and it's been an exciting journey so far.
Thanks, Brian. That is just so exciting, not only as an entrepreneur, but a great example of what entrepreneurial opportunities there are now, given our new workplace environment.
Well, thank you, Gayle and Brian. Once again, we have really enjoyed having both of you as two of our resident experts. Let's just wrap up with 5 points that we discussed today. One was 9 to 5, repeat after me, no longer exists. Be creative. Organization values are as important today as they were in prior times. And I will tell you, probably more important, especially the associated behaviors with each value. People are going to see how you behave in this new environment as a leader. Third, workforce personalization. Think about it. Treat people uniquely. It's a way to keep your A players. Workforce driven, no longer employer driven. And new leadership model is all about driving performance, and especially building and really creating an environment of high trust. And trust is a two-way street. And last but not least, think about and pursue the new tools that are being created as we speak that are going to help you in this new environment. We can't thank Brian and Gayle enough, and we certainly would encourage each of you to go to our website, peopleink.com. And we enjoyed very much being with you today.